Hello and welcome to another wonderful panel for the Women's Writers Fest by SheThePeople TV. I can certainly tell you that all of us here, all four of us, have murder on our minds, and I'll tell you why. Because we are unpacking the mystery behind memorable and impactful, unique thrillers. And before we embark on this journey of murder and mayhem, let me please tell you a little bit about the incredible panelists that I have with me. Nidhi Upadhyay is a best-selling author known for her debut novel That Night, published by Penguin Random House India and Southeast Asia in April 2021. I'm sorry, I'm arriving in the middle of your bio, Nidhi, but your book was the one that blew my mind and initiated me into the world of audiobooks. It was incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
the book quickly became a national bestseller, selling over 65,000 copies, which is no mean feat, and claiming the top spot as Amazon's #1 horror bestseller. Last year, Nidhi's book, I Hear You, a gripping blend of domestic noir and science fiction, which also achieved the national bestseller status just as swiftly. The National Arts Council of Singapore awarded grants for That Night and I Hear You. Nidhi further showcased her versatility with Shanknad, a play featured at Singapore's Multicultural Theatre Festival, Dastak 2021. An engineering graduate from Kurukshetra University, Nidhi left a successful headhunting career to pursue writing and motherhood. She lives in Singapore with her husband, two children, and their cherished fur baby. Moving on to Meeti, whose incredible book, The Matrimonial Murders, I loved as well. You must read it. Meeti writes the Temple Hill Mystery Series. She has been shortlisted for the CWA Marjorie Allingham Short Mystery Prize in the UK in 2024, longlisted for the CWA New Blood Dagger Award in 2022, and shortlisted for the Times of India Author Awards in 2023. That's a very decorated cap, Meeti. Apart from this, she has also written a critically acclaimed memoir, Do You Know Any Good Boys? A funny guide to the Indian arranged marriage, which has been optioned for screen. Before turning to full-time writing, Meeti was a copywriter and creative consultant with an award-winning career in advertising spanning over 16 careers. She has contributed to publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the Mint Lounge, and the Condé Nast Traveler. Meeti writes from a little blue desk in Mumbai, where she lives with her husband and daughter and a dozen astonishingly sturdy houseplants. They're luckier than mine. Her new Temple Hill mystery, A Matrimonial Murder, is out in stores now. My longtime writing buddy, Kanchana Banerjee, enjoys writing thrillers, reading about cold cases, true crime events, and these often serve as inspiration for her books. She has a wonderful podcast as well, which she gives a platform for books and wonderful authors. You must check it out, Telltale with Kanchana. She's the author of four books, A Forgotten Affair, Nobody's Child, and I on You, Nobody's Child, and her fourth title, Until I Find You, which was an incredible thriller. I kept biting my
Thank
nails
you.
right to the end. You must read it. Nobody's Child will soon be a web series on an OTT platform. So there you go, August panel. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Richa, thank you for those lovely introductions. But let me tell our viewers a little bit about you. Richa S Mukherjee is a TEDx speaker, an award-winning writer, ex-journalist, and ex-advertising professional. She's the author of 5 novels, 3 of which are headed for screen adaptations. Vigilantes, a cozy comedic thriller, was recently launched. I've read it, guys. It's really funny. She's a blogger and travel writer and contributes to several platforms. Her work and words have featured in publications such as the Times of India, Midday, the Asian Age, the New India Express, Bombay Times, a long list. She has, in Creativity Initiative in 2023, she was a part of it, and she serves on the jury for the South Asian chapter of the Ladli Media and Advertising Awards for gender sensitivity. She has authored e-singles, anthologies, and audiobooks. She's an avid traveler, fitness enthusiast, and a Kathak dancer. So it's a colorful and very well-decorated bio.
Thank you so much, Meeti. Now I think if the time is right to dive right into it. Since we're talking about thrillers, when you look back, something I have realized is thrillers can be written from very different spaces and very different mind spaces as well. But when you look back, there is something that has caught your attention in a very unique way. In a sense, there is either this could be characters, this could be the characterization, the theme, the tone of voice. There are many ingredients. There are, there's some people call it the secret sauce. Uh, we live in a, I mean, if you look back, there used to be a time when thrillers used to occupy this tiny hole, somewhere at the back of a bookstore. And now with possibly 300 titles, hitting bookshelves every single month, there are many that, come from the thriller and crime space. And there are many, and the subgenres that they occupy. It's great for the category, but given the amount of competition and all the external factors that we also need to be mindful of these days in terms of trends and what's selling and what's not and the different kind of formats that are being used. As I was referring to earlier, what is that ingredient, what is that secret sauce that you think that contributes to creating something that is unique, that could possibly become a classic later, and that is leaves an indelible mark with readers? So Meeti, why don't you share your thoughts first?
So I thought about this, Richa, but I feel that the minute you write a story which only you can tell, you can make it unique. So there's, like you said, there are hundreds of thrillers, being published in the country right now, thousands in the world. But we as writers, when we are creating a work of art, we're composites of our life experiences, the books we've read, the places we've traveled to, the experiences we've had, and the when we are creating, even when we are writing crime, which is so far, which hopefully is very far removed from the kind of lives we are leading, but even when we are writing crime, we put a lot of ourselves into any kind of work that we're doing, right? So, for instance, in my book, in a matrimonial murder or any of my Temple Hill mysteries, they're set in the neighborhood of Malabar Hill. Temple Hill actually is Malabar Hill, and it's this affluent, conventional Gujarati neighborhood. Now, I remember you telling me that you grew up not far from that. There, am I right? We spoke about this. And we're both based in Bombay. We're both of a certain similar age. We've lived there. But look at the books I'm writing and look at what you're writing. And we're both writing crime. But each of them are so unique and so different from each other because we've just brought our perspectives to it. I'm talking about this Gujarati world that, I grew up in and I know intimately. So I think the minute you're authentic to what you know, you can do something different.
Absolutely. Nidhi?
So, Richa, I'm going to answer it in a very different way, probably a reader's point of view, because to be honest with you, I'll read my book 500 times before it actually reaches one of you to read, right? So I cannot write something which I'm not going to read. So that brings me to a question, what am I going to pick from the, as you mentioned, hundreds of books coming on the in the subgenres these days with the thrillers. I started reading with Agatha Christie, Who Done It. That was it. Now the mystery has subgenres, domestic thrillers, and all that. So what actually speaks to me is the unique narration style. So, for example, we have this blockbuster formula of a stalker and a helpless girl, right? From the days of Kiran from Dur. Now, from there, we have come to a place where the stalker is talking to you. I'm talking about you, addressing you directly, right? So it gives you creeps. That cannot be any better than the unique narration style you had, and you make the environment as safe as a bookstore, or for that matter commuting in a train, right? I See You by Claire McIntosh, that is high stake hide and seek game, which actually sets you thinking that are you really safe somewhere. So those kind of unique narration style, if you blend them with a genre blending, which tops my choice of reading. For example, this is a simple love triangle, and you kind of give a twist of reality bending in Behind Her Eyes, right? The ending is like completely going to blow you. So those are the kind of books or for that matter, Black Mirror, which is, I don't know whether you have seen it or not, right on your face, the technology they talk about.
Yes. I'm
Those are the
comfortably
kind of,
spoken.
yeah, those are the kind of things that actually attract me in a book. And then when I was reading them, I had to have something that produces a similar kind of thing. So when you talk about that night, it has four women, different side. There is, Catherine, who's real believer of occult and all the supernatural. And opposite to her is Anjali, who's very practical and doesn't believe in it. And then there are two other friends who are just standing on the border, ready to get on that side or this side. So I'm telling a story from four different point of views and different concept of occult and fear. Similarly, and again blending horror with thriller. And in I Hear You, the strategy was completely different. I wanted to add sci-fi into the thing, but I wanted a unique voice. Now, unique voice in that book is the baby in the womb, Rudra, who's going to tell you the story from his point of view. So, my entire idea of writing a book came from that, from the whole inspiration of what I really liked in the books. And that is how I actually write my books.
Lovely, lovely. And thanks for those wonderful examples as well. Kanchana?
So, I completely agree both with Meeti and Nidhi on this, that you have to be very authentic to your voice. And secondly, you have to do something which has not been done before. See, because, we are living and we are writing at a time when great authors have written before us, and I always say this, that all original story ideas have already been taken, thanks to Mr. Jeffrey Archer, Mr. Shakespeare, and so many others, Sidney Sheldon, etc. So the thing is that, of course, you have to be very authentic in your own voice, as Meeti said, because it's only you who can write. But I believe as an author, you have to go beyond that, because otherwise, your story will be just another story like the thousands and the thousand lakhs of stories that have been written before. And that's where playing with narration, playing with the tone of voice comes in play. Like, if you take the example, why is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn such a path-breaking, iconic book, which started almost a revolution, in the kind of women's literature, crime literature, that at the very base of Gone Girl, the story is of a philandering husband who has problems with his wife, a wife who's a bit of a psychotic, quite a bit of a psychotic, and who suspects her husband of, of cheating on her. It's a very ordinary and a very done, story. But look at the way Gillian Flynn has turned that story into such an amazing, piece of literature, by having an unreliable narrator, by both Nick and Amy speaking, and it just completely blows your mind. Then if you look at Claire McIntosh's I See You, there she uses all three tones of voice: first person, second person, and third person. I think it is an amazing, amazing book which thriller writers and authors should read, and not just read for fun, but learn from. That how and again, the story of ICU is a very, very oft-told, common sleeping with the enemy. A abusive man, psychotic abusive man, and a woman who's, and the wife who's completely, hassled, harried, and in danger, and she's running away. And how Claire McIntosh has changed the a very oft told tropey story into something so amazing. And that's exactly what I tried to do with Nobody's Child, with Eye on You, and with Until I Find You. That I've tried to tell the story with a different narrative structure. I've used first person all through Nobody's Child, and that is why I think Nobody's Child kind of caught on to to readers so much, that the protagonist does not talk in the story at all. It's only in the end where the protagonist comes and speaks. And throughout the book, it is through the narration of three other characters, very important characters in her life, that you get to know about what has happened in Asavari's life. So I think, getting out of your comfort zone, to sum it all up, that getting out of your comfort zone, of course, being true to your voice, because if you're not true to your voice, the story will be absolutely flat. but to come out of the comfort zone and deal with certain complexity in narration, in narrative structures, is what makes your story unique and stand out. That is my take on this.
I think you guys have covered it all, and I think the consensus is this: that it can always be traced back to an originality, originality which can come from the use of a device, from a point of view, a character, but it has to be your own unique voice. And there were so many wonderful examples that were given in contemporary writing. I want to just throw a few more examples from the, I guess, the iconoclasts and the change makers that actually created a lot of the subgenres and the kind of writing, crime writing. So if I look back at one example, which is not necessarily attributed to the crime genre and is a classic, is Crime and Punishment. And it is not necessarily alluded to as a dark thriller, but for me, it was one of the most incredible works. And for a lot of people, it was one of the earliest and most incredible works in the space of criminal psychology. What is it that can, and in those set in those times, what is it that can take a regular Joe? What are the circumstances that can drive any regular person to crime? And what are the mental machinations? What is the cogitation that is happening behind that? So I think that was incredible. The grand aim of cozy mysteries, Agatha Christie. She set an archetype, a beautiful framework within all of us operate and dip into so often, right? And she did it so beautifully without the obvious tropes of aggression and murder and crime and gore, right? So she did it beautifully as well. For me, Shoradindu Bandyopadhyay's Byomkesh Bakshi, who I constantly doff my hat to when I'm, thinking of Prachand Tripathi from my Kanpur Khufia series. The fact that there was this dhoti-clad gentleman who was absolutely most unlike any detective you could have ever conjured in your mind. He's the one who's going about solving mysteries. So I think I was heavily influenced, and so many people, readers and writers alike, have been influenced by Byomkesh Bakshi. Ruth Rendell, I think, was somebody who I was fascinated with because I found her books much later on in life, and I realized that I think she was one of the first people who I realized could marry humor so well with thrillers. And I always looked at a lot of humor writers and it as humor as a complete entirely different genre. But the fact that so many elements of life could be blended into this kind of thriller writing, she was the one who kind of highlighted it to me. And the griplit that Kanchana was just speaking about, AJ Flynn and Paula Hawkins, these women, they have birthed this entire genre of delicious, delicate crime writing, with female, strong female characters with agency, called griplit, right? So they have shown the way that there are so many, all of these people have shown that there are such beautiful and interesting ways of, to add that uniqueness. Something that I keep borrowing from, when I'm writing, when I wrote Kanpur Khufia, an oily head detective from a small town with big dreams goes about solving crime. That was my take of that desi authenticity that I was trying to bring to the fore. I continued it in Sudhara, where I think I was as inspired by Nidhi and all the people who write horror, and I've always been fascinated by it, where I used a cursed town as a backdrop to add another horror element and somehow challenge myself while writing the comedic thriller. And Vigilantes, I think, came from a very, very personal space, of this whole idea of who aunties are. And it is so incongruous to any kind of crime solving or any problem solving that you could attribute, them capable of. So I just think that, through these examples, I think it's very interesting to always, sit back and analyze what is it that, what are the examples that have inspired you, and what is it that I think each of us are appreciating and being inspired by, and then kind of it's reflecting in our writing as well. So that was wonderful. Meeti?
So, I'm listening to you guys talk and all of these wonderful examples that you all are sharing, and there's such a vast spectrum of genres and subgenres, even when it comes to crime writing. But when you kind of take a step back, and just sort of a bird's eye view of the whole spectrum that we have in front of us, do you feel that there are certain patterns to which crime writers are adhered to? Like, say, for instance, I find that women crime writers often deal with more intimate spaces. They deal with the interior lives of their characters far more than, say, a male crime writer. I don't want to generalize here, but when I look at writers like Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, Sujata Masse, so many mystery writers that we have all read and loved, their focus is slightly inward. The spaces that we're talking about are homes. In all of these, the domestic thrillers, that in the griplet that we spoke about, the spaces are homes or offices, or in Vigilantes, for example, a colony. So they're contained spaces where we find that the writer is looking inward. We're focused on the characters, the interiority of the characters. Whereas when men write, somehow I see that the canvases are larger. They are, I'm talking about in thrillers. Of course, there are lots of psychological thrillers that men have also written where, the focus is the interior life. So before anybody jumps on me, but just as a broadly speaking, I find that their canvases are wider. They're talking about countries and cities and politics and espionage. And it always interests me that why women are drawn to look inward like that and peep into people's personal lives rather than big happenings and big events. Nidhi, Richa, Kanchana, whoever.
I can go first. Probably I will answer your question in an answer, Meeti. Do you remember any movie or story where the guy lost his spouse and is lying on the floor, crying ugly with tears and snorts? I don't remember any, right? And flip the story, and if the woman is crying, throwing things and crying, nobody would even blink an eye, right? Because that's how the societal norm is. We are emotionally intelligent because we are allowed to kind of recognize and express our feelings. Whereas I bet you, if you write the character where the man is crying, I'm sure people will come after you saying, "Ladke rote thodi hain," right? Men don't cry. So that is what we are raised in, and all that saying, I can bet that they are not allowed to cry on anything, anywhere till, I mean, when we were growing up. Things are changing now. So when we write, yes, it is a gold mine of psychological exploration when we do that, adding layers of emotions and everything. Men are not comfortable expressing that. They won't even cry when their Wi-Fi dies in the middle of an India-Pakistan match. Forget about shattered hearts and all that, right? So those kind of emotions, when are not expressed, and they're what I call is emotionally constipated guys, they can't write, or they won't be able to relate to these kind of stories, or won't be able to express because they haven't learned to express those kind of things. Those are the things that we were trained or were told, okay, go all out and cry. You are okay to cry like Rudali. But the men would have to be contained and calm. So I think that begins the reason of why they write beyond and up and about all the stories that doesn't involve the nitty-gritties of emotions, and it is more to do with all the cool themes they can come up with, right? But when we write, good for us, we have those gold mines sitting there to explore the layers of emotional things. Having said that, Nicholas Spark makes you cry on every love letter he wrote in the book, or for that matter, my favorite, Harlan Coben. His All his psychological thrillers, all his thrillers are all about families, protecting the parent or protecting the kid. So yes, we cannot generalize, but typically it comes from the societal norm of, you have to be the strongest one. So they look for stories that are stronger than just crying. How about you,
But
Kanchana? What do you think?
yeah, I have a slightly different take on this. I agree with you, but I have, I think, women, now don't get me wrong, okay? I think, two reasons. One is that women have always had their own little world of their sister-in-law, mother-in-law, sisters, siblings, mom, and aunts. And there has been gitch going on in their little world much before they stepped out into the world and they decided to talk about. And a lot of ugly things happened, in their little woman world, which were worthy of being told, which were worthy stories. And also, so I think the women are more introspective, and they think a lot about themselves and their relationships and what is happening in those relationships, and transitions, transitioning, than than men. As Nidhi said, that men probably want to look at the larger world outside, and and women are more about like, to give you an example, of course, I think, I mean, I'm very biased towards Gillian Flynn. I don't think a man could have written Gone Girl, because the way Gillian Flynn gets into the head of Amy, I don't think, it is possible for, you know anyone else other than a woman to write those stories. And if you I'm a huge fan also of Lisa Jewell's books. Then She Was Gone, then The Family Upstairs. The trauma that the kids go through because of this cult man and his keep. They just come over and take over the parents and take over the house. What the 13-year-old son, I think his name is Harry or Henry, I don't remember, he and his younger sister, what they go through for 11 years when a cultish kind of cult leader moves into the house and takes over their lives completely. I think, it's a very woman's perspective. And then her iconic book, Then She Was Gone. Oh my God, I think it is every mother's worst nightmare come true. It's fantastic. It's beautifully written, but it is heartbreakingly terrifying. And again, I think only a woman, could have written that book. Then if you look at Liane Moriarty, of course, Liane Moriarty is not a classic thriller writer, but her Big Little Lies, the lives of three women, three friends, how they intersect, and the drama in the school, and the school, PTA meetings, and how secrets are revealed and how trauma is revealed. I think, this is just, women have decided to write about the world that they inhabited and kept to themselves for so long. They are just now going out and talking about the nightmares and the horrors that have happened to them, and that, unfortunately still happens to so many of us, so many women out there. It happens. So I think this is something which is unique for women, because we have been living these things. We have been living with these dangers, and we've been living with these malices. So, and they are now out there writing about it.
Such wonderful examples, Kanchana. Thank you so much. Puts things into perspective, and I honestly think that when I started reading thrillers, and it was a very gender agnostic world for me. It just mattered where the stories are coming from. And I think, not that I'm justifying it for the men, I'm just saying that I think all the writers came of a place where societal, what was happening in their environment and society at large at that point in time was very reflective in what they wrote and how they thought of women, people, situations, society, politics, all of that. In a sense, like a lot of times when my dad used to sit with us with the scriptures, he used to tell us that, look, it has eventually been written by a man. You pick and choose what makes sense to you and the general, the gist of it and the nuggets, and you leave the rest behind. So I think a lot of it does reflect in the stereotypical male versus female gaze that, we kind of keep speaking about. But here's the wonderful thing. Irrespective of which era a woman writer belongs, is from, whether they're working, whether they are homemakers, what doesn't change the fact is the intimacy and and I guess, the amount of intensity with which we interact with our environment in terms of our responsibilities as homemakers, as working women, as mums, as sisters, as people who have people in their employ, as householders, as the way we interact with the world is very, very different. The minutiae, all these small irritants and the things that make us happy on a day-to-day basis. Like Kanchana said, it is our own individual world. A lot of us wouldn't like it that way. That why is it that I have to take on more, but this is the reality. This is our reality. The way our life is structured irrespective of what we are doing in our lives, we are always going to be that much more, I guess, immersed and involved in the world around us. And that is what I think leads us to have such an interesting, it's not always fun, and that's why we end up writing, a lot about murdering people, because there's so many people intensely annoying us on a daily basis. But I think women are innately engineered to, think, have that attention to detail, have that kind of sensitivity to their experiences, and it all goes into this deep dark, sometimes happy, sometimes sad reservoir of experiences, and I think we can always readily dip into that. So that is, I think we just have more access to our emotions. And, over the years, I think we're a little more unapologetic about writing and expressing every single aspect of what we experience. It's not about, how it will be perceived. It's more about telling the story, telling it authentically. And, if this is what I experience on a daily basis, then why the heck not should the world know about it? I mean, make yourself uncomfortable. I don't care. I feel, horrendous in this part of my day. I feel like murdering people, in one half of my day, and there's joy, intensity, there's a whole plethora of emotions on a daily basis. And I think that is sometimes an intensely maddening reservoir to write from and dip into, but I also think it's beautiful, because I think we innately have a gift to feel more and to sense more, and to be able to translate that into our stories. And one thing I will definitely say is that women write sex scenes way better than men. I have no qualms saying that. My God, it's always about the
Totally.
grind and the heave and the bosom and the God knows what. And there's the delicacy and a beauty in the way women will describe what's happening to them, and the man in such a beautiful, prosy, beautiful way that you're left heaving for a different reason. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll just add one line to what Richa said, that, and this is good, this has had people in splits, but it is true. The the female of every species in the animal kingdom and in the humankind, women, the female gender, they are more conniving, they're more calculating, and they're more dangerous. Like a lioness and a tigress will kill to protect their cubs, and they are by far more dangerous. Like the female, a she snake is, a cobra is much more dangerous than the male, this thing. So see, red for Nidhi and I are championing the red brigade
So
here.
I'm
Yes.
representing in a patchy way.
Yeah. And Meeti is wearing a red lipstick, so she's on.
Yes.
I
Okay,
was
let's move on.
listening to
Yeah.
all of you all talk about the kind of writers you'll read, and the examples that you'll have shared about all the various writers who do domestic thrillers so well. And I just realized that not only as writers, but also as readers, we women are drawn to these spaces. Like all of us, the examples we shared is coming from our own reading, right? So
Yeah.
the kind of none of us have spoken about the slow horses variety of like that genre of writing. Like where are the spies? Where are the espionage? Where are the political, the legal thrillers? None of it. We've all spoken about a certain kind of writing that we are drawn to, the Lucy Foley, Lisa Jewell kind of writing. And it makes me wonder whether we're just because as writers we're writing that, and then as readers we're also consuming that. And it's just
Absolutely.
interesting to see. Nidhi, you wanna?
Meeti, I think even if they write thrillers that are spy thrillers, for example, Christine Hanna's The Nightingale, it's categorically a spy thriller, right? But the way it has been written, it actually discusses the emotional intricacies, how as a woman, a younger sister, how you feel, how you went through all of that. So again, we do discuss emotions, and no matter how much violent or intense books we write as women, the question that comes to my mind, and often I face it, do you feel pressure to clarify, like, these characters are actually drawn from your real life or not? Do you have to handle those assumptions that are coming about your relationships? The fear of judgment, does it actually try to influence your writing? is something that keeps me, thinking when I'm writing something very dark in the book, because I'm going to be judged. My husband, my brother, my mother-in-law, all are going to be under the radar. So how do you, Richa, for example, how do you create characters that the finger is not going to point on you or your family?
So I think this is something that has really got me into trouble very early on in my writing career, because we tend to borrow from our lives. And when I was writing my first book, I didn't expect to be expecting. It got me into a lot of trouble with my mom-in-law and everybody trying to guess who's who. And I remember my husband went to the airport and my book was right there. His German boss picked it up and he said, "Wow, your wife's book." And he took it. And at the end of the flight, he looked at my husband and said, "Anirban, I know way too much about you. I wish I didn't know this much about you, but I mean, so that does tend to happen. But I think as we mature as writers and as we experiment with our writing styles, what tends to happen is that we borrow ideas and inspiration, and all of it is about things we've experienced, conversations we've had, which might trigger you into a particular story. There is a starting point, but I feel that as the story evolves, it takes on a life form of its own, and then then it's nurtured within that ecosystem, and then that point of inspiration remains a point of inspiration. But at times where I have attributed an entire book to such a major trigger point, I've actually made it a point to go back and thank that person. My book Excess Baggage, which was a story about a mom and a daughter, and they are labeled as divorcees, and there's a lot of these labels and judgment that comes their way. And it happened when I was on a flight to Spain, and a friend of ours, came to us and she said, "I've been divorced." And I was so annoyed with the way even she expressed her situation in life. It just sounded like, she's this unfortunate, poor little, woman who's been left by the wayside. And that's not the way, we should look at this. It's a certain unfortunate, thing that happens in the course of your marriage, in the course of a relationship, and then you move on with strength and with the rest of you intact. So I remember going back to her and actually not just in the acknowledgement, calling her up and telling her that, you've been a major inspiration source. So this tends to happen. Uh, and also because I think there are a lot of people who are involved in this entire story. I tend to write about some difficult topics. There are people who have experienced things in my family and I've chosen to write about it. Whether Excess Baggage, which is talking about divorce and the labels and the judgment that comes to women. Whether it's Kanpur Khufia, which is talking about patriarchy and gender roles, and how strong women hold their own. Whether it's Vigilantes, which is talking about so many horrendous things that happen to women and violence, and how it is that women can emerge with agency. These are a lot of difficult topics, and if it has come again from that reservoir of experiences that we've had as women, as daughters. We've seen it all happening around us. So I think as long as you're careful about a correct sort of portrayal and you being authentic to the source these stories have come from, having the open conversations, letting them know if something might be misconstrued in another way. I have done strange things, like in my second book, I accidentally ended up using the name of a character, which is a very, very peculiar, strange character, and this guy not portrayed in the best light. And I don't know what I was thinking. The person who I wrote about actually called me up and said, "That's me." And that wasn't a pleasant conversation. So it tends to happen, but I think that because it takes a village to, I think, create books and produce the kind of stories we do, everybody kind of understands their part in the whole scheme of things. As long as we're respectful of that inclusion and we're acknowledging them along the way, I don't over intellectualize what I am writing. The inspiration point, great, but after that, Stephen keeps talking about knowing your ideal reader. I don't think I should be proud about this, but 5 books later, I still think I'm trying to grasp who my ideal reader is. So I somehow take that as a means for my freedom as a writer. I am happy to just channelize a story that needs a way out. I will do my best with it. And how it's received, how I'm perceived as a writer, uh, is something I don't bother about when I'm writing the story. So I know that I'm in a space, I'm in a contemporary fiction, I'm in a comedic thriller space. There is a certain area of operation, which is a combination of social commentary, entertainment, meaty, hearty stories. I try to keep myself within that, but then I don't overthink about who is thinking of me in what way and what persona I exude. That I think will become clear through my writing and the interactions I have after the book is out.
Yeah, I'll take those tips for my next book because I've written about mother-in-law, a nasty one. So I'm going to come to Richa for that. So Kanchana, what's your take on this?
So the thing is, see, my first book, and I think, when people write their first books, they're either writing about themselves or they're writing about the experiences they've had. Because, you're dying to get that book out of you. And there are so many experiences, so many people that you have met in your life till that point. You're, of course, this is not a rule. I'm just saying that, of course, there are exceptions, but in general, with your first book, you just want to kind of talk about either yourself, your own journey, or the journey that you have witnessed others taking. And in my case, like, A Forgotten Affair was born out of my observation of how women in affluent, so-called educated homes are minimized and ill-treated and put down by their, again, so-called educated husbands. So, and they were and that book is full of characters amongst my friends, amongst my relatives, and of course, I have garnished them sufficiently so that it's not so obvious. But I kind of faced something else with my first book. A lot of my friends were offended that they're not in the book. I don't mean anything to you. You've written your first book and we don't feature in it. I said, oh my God. So there are two ways to it. But having said that, going ahead after you're done with your catharsis, with your cleansing, with whatever, you of course have to depend, and you need to depend on external influences and external characters, and you have to be a very people's person, in the sense, be very observant of people around you, their quirks and etc. And I may not remember what dress you wore or how your hair looks, but if you have a if you have a if you have a quirk, if you have a tick, if you have a certain way of sitting, or if there is something odd about you, I will notice it. And it will be lodged somewhere in my brain, and it might just come out at some point in time. Like in Until I Find You, Sejal, the character who gets killed, she has a very, very prominent bunion on her feet. And there's a very close friend of mine, and when I was writing this, I was thinking that how will I make Inspector Virat make the connection between the severed leg and Sejal, whom he is missing. So I'd gone for tea to my friend's house, and of course I know that she had a bunion, but it just, sometimes things just come together. And then she was with her foot on the table, she was shaking it, and the big fat bone was jutting out. I said, "Oh my God, I found it." He said, "I'm so glad, I'm so happy that I was able to inspire the severed leg connection." Uh, and to answer, so these kind of influences keep on happening. To answer the second part of your question, Nidhi, is that as you know, I write very dark and gritty thrillers, and I love wearing saris. I love wearing dogs. So what am I saying? I said I love my dog. I love my dogs. I love wearing saris, and I am out there at lit events in saris, and I'm on social media often with my dogs. So a lot of people, not my friends, but at literature festivals, at book events, people have asked me that, Kanchana, how is it that a woman who loves her linens and loves her jamdanis and silks and chiffons and loves playing with her doggies writes such dark movies, dark stories? So I just tell them that, by this logic, Stephen King, James Patterson, and others should have been, kind of locked up in a psychiatric ward. They are absolutely functional, family men. They're married, they have kids. It's just that, as a writer, I like to explore the dark side of humanity. and I find evil fascinating because I just want to explore how a evil mind works, and a person who has absolute no moral compass, and and scatter clues around, and and just make it intriguing. So yeah, I do get judged, but not by my immediate family. Thankfully, they know me quite well. But yeah, I do get judged, and that it doesn't affect me. I do me. I write what I want to write.
How about you, Meeti? How much judgment comes to you?
So I actually, before I started writing crime, I wrote a memoir because, like Kanchana said, your first book is very
Yeah.
personal. So I had this whole arranged marriage experience that I needed to get out of my system, and so the memoir is in fact very, very, because it's a memoir. It's true to the people I met and the characters who were in my life at that time. But as I progressed to fiction, and Richa said, you mature as a writer. So while I do go out and draw a lot from my interactions with the world, but none of my characters are people who, I mean, they're composites. They have traits of people I have met. I actually have a little book called my inspiration book where I jot down interesting conversations I overhear or interesting traits that people exhibit. And then I flip through it, and then somewhere it sticks, and then the characters that come out are composites. So I'm never really worried about them being identified, about someone reading the book and identifying themselves in it. However, what I do is when I'm working, I work with a lot of names I know. So when the manuscript is done and when I'm supposed to submit it, I go back and change a lot of names, because then I try and I go through my phone book and see, names that I have not heard of. I go through my kids' school list of kids in the class, and I different places where I can get names where they have no connection to me or my circle of people. So that's something I do. But as you said, a fear of judgment, no, because by the way, you should know that unlike you guys, I don't write very dark books, even though my books do deal with murder. There's no explicit violence, sex, or anything graphic in the books. So it's a fairly traditional genre I write. So I think that helps me, uh, write without really curbing myself.
So, Meeti, I have a
So,
question for you. Sorry, can I ask
yeah,
a
yeah, go ahead.
question, Nidhi? Yeah. So, Meeti, since you write about, so I'm guessing you are a Gujarati yourself, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So you write about your own community. Doesn't that make things sticky for you? And you live very close to the entire, bunch of people. And, and I've read both of your books, and wonderfully written. And there are, in some places you are laughing at some of the characters, because, in all communities, in Bengali community, in Punjabi community, we have these very typical characters that we want to write about, and we want to talk about. So have you never been judged for that? Have you been,
No, I hear you. I'm very clear that the books I'm writing are not only crime. There is a certain amount of social commentary that I am doing with both my books.
uh,
The world I'm talking about is extremely concerned about their appearances. And a lot of the actions they take, a lot of the way they conduct themselves in their lives are driven by this motive where they want to appear in a certain way. There's a perception that they want to keep up, and a lot of the actions they take, whether it's the death of Kirti Kadakya or even my second one with matrimonial murder, I'm talking about the pressures that women face for getting married, the stigma attached to being single, the stigma attached to being divorced. There's a lot of social commentary that I do. But like you said, I'm talking about this world. I'm very fond of this world, but doesn't mean I can't. As a Gujarati myself, I in fact find it far easier to criticize
yeah,
my people. I would be a little more hesitant if I was to criticize, say, a Bengali trait, because you don't want to.
yeah, yeah,
You don't know the inside out of it. You don't want to then point fingers and be. But with this world that I'm writing about, I do know it intimately,
okay.
and I feel quite comfortable calling A for Apple, you know, when things are off, and when in fact that's easier when you're part of the
Okay.
community. You can sort of crack jokes on them and laugh at
And
yourself. We
and
laugh at ourselves, right?
similarly, like Kanchana knows, I find it very easy to make fun of the Bengali community, because now that I have a Mukherjee attached to the end of it, so I take great liberties with that. With every single book of mine, even in Vigilantes, there's this character called this inspector who loves to cook, called Bharatendu Bandhopadhyay, and I had my father-in-law calling me at many points saying that Bharatendu is not a Bengali name. Why is the moody ghonto being eaten like this? I said, listen, it's all right. I can
Trust a
I will
Bengali
write
man to
one.
do that.
Yes, yes.
But
Yeah,
I
I
love
mean,
that
Richa, if your father-in-law
character.
called for a name, imagine my father calling after reading I Hear You and telling me, is everything okay with you? Your husband was okay. I did not make a mistake of, marrying you and throwing you in Singapore. And it was like, okay, that was the first book he read. And the second one, he comes and tells me, this is what you used to do in hostel. It was like, do you think so? So the judgment part, with me, it has been like right on my face, asking me questions like, everything is okay with you, kind of things. But as we can sum it, the idea is to create a gripping narrative. And we are not the therapist of our readers' curiosity, right? So we work for whatever the character demands, and the more the mess is, the better it is for us, right?
No, and in
True.
fact, I think what thrillers, all subgenres, all kinds of thrillers help people do is live vicariously through these heinous characters. There's a whole range of these colorful personalities, and it's almost a delicious, vicarious intent that I can be in their shoes and not be in their shoes. I can critique them. I can experience what it feels like. So it's a sort of a release. So it allows people to
Absolutely.
be so many more, and peep into
True.
the darker side.
Like
So
I had the best time of my life writing the chapters on Kamini Pratap Singh in Nobody's Child. Oh my God. The opening line of her, this is that motherhood is a migraine which needs to be managed. And my son comes and asks me, I'm so happy to know that I'm a migraine to you, mommy. I had a blast, and I was a little worried that readers are not going to, are probably going to react adversely. But it just goes to show people like bad. Bad girls are people talk about them, snigger at them, but people like bad girls, and they like evil. They are yeah. Okay, so let's move on.
yeah, so I'm just looking at the time. Yeah, so we'll take a couple of last few questions. Kanchana, would you?
Yeah. So, okay, now here is where we talk about our latest books. And we've been talking about the entire scope of thriller writing and different influences and etc. So before I go on, I just want to share a little small good news from my side. Though I can't reveal all, but my latest book, Until I Find You, has been picked up by a production house, and it will be made into a movie sometime soon, hopefully. So I'm very happy about that, and I'm looking forward to be able to sharing more information about this. Uh, so most, I think all of our books are, while there are thrillers and there are inspectors, but it's about the common man. It's about the ordinary person becoming a sleuth, becoming the detective, or going around solving the crime. So, Nidhi, I want to start with you. You began your writing career with a very different book, a memoir, which was about your experiences in arranged marriage, and then you moved on to a very cozy murder mystery genre, as it is called. And talking of and the central character or the detective in your books is this woman, who's come back to India. She's a writer. So what was the genesis of this character, and how did you think of this character, and why?
So Radhi Zaveri, the protagonist, is a writer. So I wanted someone who had some perspective. So she needed to have lived abroad for some time and then come back. So she has got an outsider's point of view on the Temple Hill Gujarati community and the way they function and their conventions and traditions. And so, like we were talking about earlier, so she can laugh at them if she needs to. She can criticize them if she needs to. She needed that remove from the real world. So that
She's
is why
basically you. She's basically you.
she's basically me with a great metabolic rate, is what I like. She eats anything and everything
Wow.
that she wants to without ever worrying about the calories.
That's
So
the magic power we all want.
yeah, she's
Absolutely.
no, she's
Especially after 40.
no, but she's not me. I mean, a lot of people ask me because, hey, writer, hey, she's lived abroad. So is it drawn from you? But not really, because with Radhi, I take a lot of liberties. She smokes and she's had multiple affairs, and she's just got this colorful life. She's flawed in so many ways. She suffers from so much guilt. There's a lot of emotional baggage that she carries into her stories. So the with Radhi, it's just I have a lot of fun with her. I make her do a lot of things that I wouldn't dream of doing. Uh, but I want her to be in those situations. She's a privileged person. She's a millionaire actually, so she's got access to the high society in on Malabar Hill.
Hmm.
So just a lot of fun to write that character. And that's how it's come about.
Great. So we'll okay. Then Nidhi is back. So Richa, you have always kind of made a hero out of an ordinary person, as we all know, with Kanpur Khufia, and he's such an adorable and such a loved character. Let's talk about your most recent book, Vigilantes. What is it that made you think about a bunch of ladies in having a kitty party? So it's like they have a kitty party of samosas and wafers, and so let just take us through the journey of genesis of the vigil aunties.
Um, so it started just in a nutshell. I think, again, that reservoir I keep on talking about, referring to, where all our experiences reside and, where our
Mm,
ideas come from. I was just amused by the fact that, how people will be labeled in a certain way without actually wanting to understand who are these people on a daily basis, what are their motivations, what are they going through physically, mentally. It's amusing for us. A bunch of people, a bunch of women who are 30 plus, are aunties, they're nosy parkers, a term that was meant to be accorded to someone to give them respect is now used very callously as to represent women who have nothing better to do in their lives. अपने घर पे ये काम करो, whether you're working, whether you're not working, it doesn't matter. You're an irritating auntie. An auntie is almost used to put you in your place. So I just wanted to challenge this kind of mentality, and I wanted to take the strangest and most I guess unexpected bunch of sleuths that could ever exist, and put them in this crumbling old society. I understood the framework within which I operate is obviously that it's a comedic thriller. I tend to position all my stories in small tier 2 tier 3 cities because I think a lot of rich charming storytelling, with everyday rituals and routines, I love that kind of storytelling, and the humor. So I knew all of this would come together along with a mystery or thriller element. But I had a lot of fun challenging everything, every single thing you could think of when I started positioning those characters. There's Varsha, who's running a small laddu agency. She makes desserts, and she lives in this very typical, structured kind of setup where her husband is this boring old man who's a CA, and her daughter doesn't think much of her. We do the same. We take our parents for granted. Lu Nongem. She's somebody who's from the northeast. She's trying to make ends meet and earn, shoulder the responsibility of her family. Every single person is this unassuming woman who you have labeled in a particular way, and yet who is part of this secret society. And I just wanted to have fun with the fact that here I'm challenging your notions. You've labeled these women, they're part of a secret society, they're doing something incredible. A lot of us have a lot of pent up anger about, especially as women, about things that are happening around us that we have no control over. And now is also a time that we are facing, that we are in the middle of and we're experiencing. where there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of emotion attached to the helplessness that we feel on an everyday basis, from small matters to big matters. And this is something these women focus on. And on the face of it, they're living their lives, but at the back end of it, they're running this wonderful secret society, managing to create an impact despite their everyday restrictions. And of course, along with that, I have thrown in everything I possibly could in terms of writing the quirky characters that I love writing. There's a cop who loves to cook. There's a dog who doesn't want to be a dog. There's chases. There's guns. There's desserts. And I had an incredible time writing it.
Great. Nidhi, over to you now.
Yeah, sure.
So, about your last book, the world of your book, the child talking from inside the womb, it's like creepy, and it's so, and it's such a unique idea. So could you just take us through the genesis of that idea? What made you think of that? And tell us a little more about your book.
So the idea actually came to my mind when I had no plan to write a book. I was actually expecting my younger one. And I noticed a very peculiar habit he had, that whenever I go for shower, whenever the faucet would run, he would kick. Every time I would start reading a book, he would kick. And that was so typical of him that I tried to experiment with it, that every time I would pick up a book to read, he's going to kick for no matter whatever happens. So that is when I started thinking that what if the game starts to talk? And I was discussing this with my firstborn, and he said, what if the baby inside you is an alien and he can actually understand what is happening? So that idea stayed there. Then within, I think, the last month of my pregnancy, I was craving for a thriller, and everybody told me that don't read anything that is very dark, and that can influence you. So I started looking for thrillers which are things that I can read during my pregnancy, and there were none. And that's when I was like, why don't we have thrillers that are about mother and a pregnant mother and a baby unborn? And that idea stayed there. And then, whatever you call it, midlife crisis hit, and I decided to write. And that was the first story I wrote. Fortunately or unfortunately, it got published later than that night. But that is how the kind of idea came into my mind. And then the difficult part to answer this is, how do I write a voice of an unborn baby, right? I haven't experienced that. I don't know how to write from an unborn's point of view. Yes, I can fix that part of emotional intelligence by making him a genetically modified fetus. But again, how do I communicate what he's seeing through the sounds he's hearing? So that was the difficult part, but it took a lot of research in terms of what month the baby can hear, what month the baby can kind of smell and taste the food and all that. But the story, I think I would give the credit to him kicking. He came out as a normal cricket lover baby. But yeah, that gave me the idea precisely.
Thank you so much, guys. This was wonderful with some great examples as well. May we continue writing thrillers stories that make people ask, are you okay? May we continue wearing our saris? And yes, here's to writing and readers.